Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. So with that in mind, let's jump right in to this week's episode of Becoming Something.
What's up, podcast world? It's your boy JP in the podcast studio. We're in the podcast studio.
Podcast studio.
Podcast studio.
Podcast studio.
Podcast studio.
Hey, we're making a pod. It's not
Podcast.
mod.
Oh,
What, mid?
man.
What is mod?
Gosh, I just want you to do something good. I would like set you up with that beat,
That
man.
had a good ring to it. I feel like
I
that
heard-
could be a song.
On that song, like Ticka Ticka Slim Shady. That I heard a story today that Dr. Dre was in the studio, and he like just played like 2 beats of that song, and Eminem like just jumped in
Wow.
and said some, like, was hearing it for the very first time, and was like, he was like, dude, that's gonna be a mega hit.
So you feel like I don't.
So I think that's gonna be a mega hit.
Yeah.
Dude, everybody
the
is gonna
same.
be playing podcast studio.
Podcast studio.
We need to like get Connor Price on this and Forrest Frank on this and
Oh man, that'd be great.
Jake on this. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Jake with a V. Shout out.
Man, guys, I listened to a great
I gotta take
podcast
my-
with Forrest Frank the other day.
All right,
This
all
is
right,
going to
take
be
it out.
disgusting,
Stop it! You didn't have
That's
to suck
disgusting.
in.
and it's sitting right there. You have 2?
Yeah.
What are they for?
I'm taking my retainers out if you're just listening. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
Could've
should.
done that
Can we
2
zoom in on that?
It's
He's
not
just sitting on the
gross.
table.
It's
not gross. It's
extremely
been sitting in
gross.
your mouth. You gross person.
My tongue is in my mouth too, and my tongue's not gross.
It's just probably covered in beer
teeth
from
are
lunch we
gross.
just had. It was
Stop.
Oh my
crazy.
gosh.
You're
Have you ever
ridiculous.
thrown away your retainer?
I'm sure it's happened.
I did. Speaking of things that were lost but now found,
JP,
I
this is
lost
like
my ring.
this is like the third or fourth
the
time.
third time I've lost my ring.
And you found it?
And the Lord, yes, we found it.
Where was it?
Underneath our couch. We had to like move the couch to find it. I don't know how it got under there. I think a kid had stolen it.
Oh, it took it off your finger.
This is the riveting.
Okay.
This is the riveting stories that
Anyways,
people
it's
listen
a
to this
really
podcast
cool story
for.
if you actually whatever.
Okay, so I was out of town last week, and you guys recorded without me,
And it was
which was
amazing.
hurtful.
Yeah.
And while I was gone, I met someone who listens to the podcast, and she goes, "Hey, what's JP like as a dad?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" She's like, "What's JP like as a
I
dad?"
forgot you told me.
And I said, I really think he's great.
He's a great dad.
Yeah, I'm like, I think he's a great dad. I
his
don't.
kids
His
seem
kids
to
seem
like him.
great. And she's like, well, like you and Kathy, like
Shut up.
JP's your
Did y'all
dad.
fight when y'all were little?
I'm like, excuse me.
That's
And
ridiculous,
she said,
man.
I think she was serious. She said she saw the podcast image,
That's
and we're on the
ridiculous.
side, and it looks like a dad and his like
No, it
daughter and son.
doesn't.
I do look young for my age.
No, I want to know. Y'all leave a review and tell me. That's ridiculous and it hurts my feelings.
Because you would have had me when you were 2 or something, like
No, I mean, I was trying to do the math on that. How old are you?
29.
Yeah,
How do you do?
I would have been, 14?
Yeah, it was just totally
And even a
possible.
little younger for me. So
Yeah, just a
there's
little
no
bit.
way.
Dude, that's whoever you are. Stop listening. You are no longer
He doesn't
allowed
really
to
mean
listen
it.
to the
He's just
podcast.
kidding.
No, I'm serious. You're no longer
struck
allowed.
a-
You
Hey,
hurt
she
my.
was nice.
hurt my
She loved the
feelings.
podcast.
How often does
She
she
thought I
listen
was
if
your
she
dad.
thought that, though?
You're like an old soul. I feel like
That's right.
people like who's
You
going to
don't
be
give
most
off,
likely
like,
to be the
young
dad.
vibes.
Yeah, I don't feel young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Where'd
are
you
really
get that
old.
shirt? Like, there's got to be a story. You did not pick that shirt out,
It was Lulu on clearance.
Clearance.
and you were like, "I'm gonna
I'm
go.
gonna blend in a if
I'm
I
gonna
went
go-
to Antarctica.
I'm gonna go hunting in Antarctica."
Yes. Guys, on Sunday, we gotta start soon, but on Sunday, JP walks out.
We saw
I've never
it.
seen this at a church before in my life. He walks out and people start laughing.
Well, did you
Like,
see what he was
are you,
wearing?
Are you like, do you have
How
like
did that
trauma
affect
after
you?
that?
No, man, I like.
what would
it's
you
just like
describe
this.
what you were wearing?
It's like what I'm wearing right now.
It actually is really
It was
similar,
just green.
except there
A
were cargo.
green tracksuit.
cargo pants?
I don't know, dude.
It was St. Patrick's
His whole
Day.
church.
Why are y'all picking on me? What's funny is my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law was
trauma.
like, "Hey, I go, should I wear this tomorrow?" Because it was green and it was St. Patrick's Day, and she goes, "Oh yeah, that will be funny," and I was like, "Funny? What are you talking about? Funny?" And then I go out and everybody starts laughing. And I was like, oh, I guess she was right. But I also got more like, hey, where did you get that? I'd like to get it. I wanted to get that more than any other time.
That's amazing.
So it's very polarizing, guys.
Gosh.
They were not kidding. I know you think you're like they weren't being serious, but they were being serious.
I know
Kathy.
with current fashion, if I don't really love something, it's probably fashionable.
Yeah, exactly.
You're more fashionable than I am.
Like every
My shirt's from Marshalls.
grandmother
I'm
in the
fine with
nursing
it.
home is gonna love that sweater.
For sure. This is like probably a grandma's cardigan. I'm happy
Facts.
with it. I'm still wearing skinny jeans, even though they're not in style.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Guys, it's Be So Live month.
that's what's up.
Are you
Come
ready
on.
for it?
I don't know.
And it's your birthday month.
It is my birthday month.
Turning 30.
So
Flirty and 30.
yeah. What I desire for my birthday, it's on a Sunday, is to preach in your green tracksuit.
What are we talking about today? This
So this is releasing on April Fools.
Today is National Atheist Day.
No, it's April Fools.
National Atheist Day.
Is that an April Fool's
Psalm,
joke?
give them Psalm 14:1. Nate, break it off for them.
Though the deer pants for water. Okay, what's another Shane
I know
song?
it. The
Okay.
fool says in his heart, there is no God.
National Atheist Day.
Ooh,
So
that feels mean.
that is not the nicest.
We should have done the pod today and been like, "Hey guys, this is the last one.
Yeah, we should, and just
We're shutting
release
it down."
We should have
wanna
started with
say,
an April
How
Fool's
do
joke.
I say goodbye to what we had?
Guys, we really
The good times that made us laugh outweigh the
So why do you
bad.
think that the psalmist would say that? Pretty harsh.
But the fool
That
the
seems
fool
pretty harsh.
says there is no God.
Because here's my thought.
Okay.
A lot of really smart people are atheists. So is he really saying they're dumb?
Smart is an interesting word. Like you can be so smart that you can't function. You know
That's
what I mean?
what people say
Like-
about me.
No.
Idiot savant.
Elaborate.
Elaborate.
You totally did say that. Yeah,
What is that word?
collaborate.
I was going to say explain
All right,
and
stop.
I thought I heard it.
elaborate.
Elaborate and listen.
I was just really trying to get you guys to stop singing, so I haven't really thought much about what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Elaborate and explain.
Well, it's like an idiot savant. Like there's people that are so smart. I mean, they have a photographic memory, but they don't function well with others. They don't play well with others. They can't communicate very well. And so you can have a high IQ, you can be very intellectual, but I would argue that if you don't understand where we came from or what our purpose is here, then you're lacking a really significant you're lacking the foundation of knowledge. So you've built an intellectual tower on sand. It's going to come crumbling down on you one day. And so, like, man, I think we got it right, and what's interesting today in the generation is like there's a generation that really roots for the underdog, that it can be like off-putting if you're like, oh, we got it right, like we chose correctly. To say that we're right is to say that somebody else is wrong. It absolutely is. To say that you're right means like here's the deal. Let me say it plainly. Like there's a God. He's the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the triune God, the God of the Bible, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nissi, Yahweh, Jesus Christ, right? And so like this is who we worship, and he is the God of all gods. He is not Buddha. He is not Allah. He is not Brahma. He is not Krishna. He is God.
Yeah.
And so those other religions are wrong, and I believe that we chose correctly, and that is both by faith and logic. There is a by faith aspect of belief, but there's also pretty like my journey. When I after college, like I was just like, what are the odds I'd be born to the right country? Like if I was born in China, I'd be Buddhist. If I was born in Iran, I'd be Muslim. If I was born in India, I'd be Hindu. If I was born in Israel, I'd probably be Jewish. If I was born in Utah, I'd be Mormon. If I was born, it's like so much of what are the odds I'd be born to a family that would know the right God? And so I was just like, erase the whiteboard. And it's like, all right, what do I really believe? And I was blown away by this carpenter who lived in Bethlehem, right? In Bethlehem is a relatively small town. There's larger cities around Bethlehem that you've never heard of. If I pull it up on Google Maps right now, there's cities right beside Bethlehem that are bigger than Bethlehem that you've never heard of in your entire life. So why do we know Bethlehem?
Oh, because that's where Jesus was born.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is right.
Why are you laughing?
Well, it didn't come very quickly. So I was like,
I couldn't tell he was asking the question at first.
So that's right, guys. Well done, kids. Well done, kids. Let me give you a raise in
Did we
your
make our dad
allowance.
proud?
Jesus was born in Bethlehem. That's the only reason we know of it. He
Right.
lived in Nazareth. He was a carpenter. You don't know of many carpenters that live. Probably don't know another single carpenter in the Middle East, right? In the history of the world, much less that lived there 2,024 years ago. By the way, 2,024 years from what? So the world has been in existence much longer than 2,024 years. And so why is the date 2024? And so it's BC, before Christ, AD, Anno Domini, that's medieval Latin for the year of our Lord. Jesus' birth reset the calendar, the Gregorian calendar that the majority of the world uses, reset on the birth of Jesus Christ. That doesn't just happen for carpenters born in the Middle East. Like people aren't looking to just like start counting. No, that would be as crazy today as if someone was born today and we just said, you know what, their birth is so significant, it's year one. Like we're just going to start over. What year is it? Year one. Next year's year two. Next year's year three. That's what happened with Jesus. Like how crazy is that?
Do people is there any pushback to that? Like, would people say that there's another reason why the calendar's reset?
No, there's no. They'll
like
say
they changed the AD.
They'll say
now,
BCE, so before Common Era.
Okay.
Even like they're just trying to get rid of Jesus.
Yes,
That's the
okay.
atheist today, right? They're just trying to get rid of Jesus, but no. It reset on Jesus's birth. People may argue like, oh, he was actually born 3 years later, 3 years before, but no. The reason that is 2024. Unapologetically, according to any expert, it's because it reset on Jesus's birth. Like that's why. And so it's like, man, wow, that is interesting that every atheist iPhone, every atheist Android phone today, when it says the year, they're counting from the birth of Jesus Christ. By the way, a great question for people when they're deconstructing or they're another religion or something is like, hey, what do you do with Jesus? What do you do? I was sharing the gospel with some Jewish guys once, leaders in the Jewish faith, and I was like, hey, so you believe that you're waiting on the Messiah, right? And they're like, yeah, we're waiting on the Messiah to come. That's like our whole faith centers around that reality. I said, hey, how come you didn't? What about Jesus?
Yeah.
What about Jesus? And the guy goes, it's interesting. I've never thought about that.
No.
Dead serious. And the other guy jumps in. The other guy jumps in.
On Sunday.
The other guy jumps in and goes, yeah, I've never thought about it.
Did you tell that sermon in your sermon?
Yeah, but it's okay.
I was out with the baby and
It's all right.
baby.
It's all right.
I was there.
But it's crazy,
what's-
like how. And I think as Christians, we're like, wait, no, Jews know that we believe that Jesus was the Messiah, but it's like that we don't know. Most of our listeners don't know what Jews believe about heaven, the afterlife, how you're saved, and so it's like arrogant for us to think, oh, all the other religions know what we believe. Did you know Isa's in? Isa. Do you know Jesus is in the Quran? Did y'all know that?
Yes.
Yeah, I
No.
Yeah, so he's Isa in the Quran. Like his character is in the Quran. And so it's like, man, every world religion out there acknowledges
when
Jesus.
Mary was born, she was like, Isa boy.
Shut up.
It's not even funny, dude. It's so dumb.
And then when he turned the water into wine, they're like, it's a miracle.
It's Isa. You're not even saying it right. How am I the dad?
Yeah.
Dude, how am I the dad? I'm telling you.
It. So, you were saying.
No, you were saying.
Well, I feel like I was, when you were telling it in the message that I was sitting in there for, I was following along in that journey where I was like, there's no way they haven't considered it.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the arrogance thing. I was like, oh, I've never once thought, hey, maybe Muhammad is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never once have?
Well, I haven't either.
I thought that was like how you got saved by like evaluating, erasing the whiteboard, looking at all the
but
religions.
I wasn't like, that's the thing is that I wasn't
Really
even like
considering it.
remotely, as I explored that, I'm like, man, if I wasn't a Christian, it's like, I don't know what I would be. I mean, agnostic. So agnostic, the A before the word. So Gnostic is knowledge.
Yeah.
So agnostic, Gnostic starts with a G. So there's silent G there, but it becomes agnostic. And that is like without knowledge, meaning we can't know. Mm-hmm. So there's a God, but we can't know who he is. Well, then I'm just like, dude, he's got to be a really weak God. Like if there's a creator, like someone who can create the heavens and the earth, they got to be giant, first of all.
Totally.
Right? I mean, like some superpower
Powerful
deity, and he can create the world, but he can't show you who he is.
Yeah.
Like what in the world?
Right.
Well, you want to make a joke or
No,
something?
I'm laughing at the Issa thing.
Yeah, he's still laughing at the Issa thing.
So then, agnostics are people who are like, yeah, there's probably a God, but we just can't know him.
So
and then
atheists are like, there is no God. Wow. So Gnostic is knowledge. Theists,
typically,
theos
an
is
atheist
God.
would be someone, like the only explanation would be like the Big Bang and evolution then for how things are the way that they are.
Just like happenstance. There's no deity. There's no greater force.
There's no one in charge.
It just is like time and chance. Molecules bang together. Life was created over time. A marsupial soup. A premortal soup.
Marsupial soup.
Yeah,
It's like
premortal
a bunch of
soup.
monkeys.
Turned into life over time. That turned into a monkey, which turned into a human.
Yeah.
And that's how we got here over billions and billions and billions of years. But there's like so much, we don't know and understand. And it's crazy. Like, let me can I give you guys a theory? I don't think we talked about this.
Okay.
So did you know that many reptiles grow their entire life?
I did because you told me.
What, like they grow their whole lives?
Yeah, like they grow.
Like humans?
Humans actually don't.
I meant like, dang it. I meant like, metaphor.
She's like, I'm gonna get taller. I'm gonna get taller.
No, you've
you
actually stopped.
Yes, I do. I stopped a long time ago.
You're no longer growing.
It's like puberty never ends.
Do you think we could just erase the last
Well,
minute?
also I looked at
Like
marsupials, and monkeys are not marsupials. It's kangaroos and wombats.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So we're all stupid. There we
That
go.
I knew.
right.
I knew that.
Okay, so there's reptiles that grow their whole life.
Yeah, like many reptiles grow their entire
Okay.
lives. And, prior to the flood, the atmosphere was different. And so people lived
longer.
like 600 years.
Totally.
Like people and animals and everything that lived for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Wow.
And so like it's like what does a 600-year-old crocodile look like?
Dinosaur.
Boom. Like what about a lizard that grows really fast? Right? It has a short lifespan, it grows fast and then dies. What is that? If that thing lives 300 years, what does it look like? Like a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a Stegosaurus or maybe a Brontosaurus. It's like, man, nobody ever talks about that. And there's so much we don't know about carbon dating, like how old. Do you know that they found a hammer? True story. The London hammer. You can Google it. They found a hammer in a rock that was 300 million years old. What do you do with that? The rock was 300 million years old. They found a hammer in it. It's like there's something not adding up. And so it's like, what do we know about things that we didn't see? Think about 200 years ago. Like there's so much that the three of us, don't know about what events 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Now, when you're talking 10,000 years ago, like that's a lot to be able to say, hey, this is what was happening. Or if it's science class, 100 million years ago, it's like, how in the world do we know what happened 100 million years ago? And so we're trusting in our dating systems And I'm raising my hand saying, hey, they're flawed.
But couldn't the same be said for you with Jesus, where it's like, how can you say you are risking your life upon saying, I know what happened 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's like, who was the first president of the United States of America?
George Washington.
Okay, right, George Washington. How do you know?
History books.
Will you just trust them? You just believe what they say. It's
Everyone
just books. You just believe what they say. And so it's
There
like
were
none of us knew, none of us
eyewitnesses.
saw George Washington, none of us met him, and yet none of us have ever questioned that
Yeah.
George Washington was the first president of the United States of America. And so it's like, why? Well, because by faith. We take that by faith, but also evidence. In the same way, there's not a credible atheist today, brilliant atheists intellectually,
Yeah.
IQ-wise,
Yeah.
but none of them would reject the existence of Jesus Christ. That they would all say, yes, there was a person. It is very likely that there was a person named Jesus Christ who lived in the first century and did really significant things.
Yeah.
Josephus Flavius writes about him. That's not the Bible, by
Yeah.
the way. So Josephus Flavius is just a Jewish historian.
Right.
So this is a Jew that lived around that time that wrote about what they observed. And in his writings, he wrote about a man named Jesus Christ, if it's even lawful to call him a man, who did wonderful things. That's his quote. If it's even lawful to
Wow.
call him a man,
Wow.
because of the wonderful things that he's done.
Wow.
And he has many followers who follow him by his namesake, Christians. So Tacitus wrote about him. There's several, Pliny the Younger, there's several people who lived in the first century, second century, third century, who wrote about Jesus Christ. That's not in one of the 66 books of the Bible, right? And so it's like, okay, this guy, he was very significant. And how is that? Well, Paul says that when he resurrected from the dead, that over 500 people saw them. And Paul implies that some of those 500 people are still alive. Or doesn't imply it, he says it explicitly. He says, he says, and you can go ask them. 500 people, some of whom are still alive today. So that just tells us that, one, Paul's writing that not very far removed from the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And two, some of the 500 people that saw him are still alive. And those 500 people told somebody, so that it got to us because it was that significant. And then we have all of these writings. So when you get to the gospel and you get to when you're reading through the Bible and you get to the New Testament, you have the same story 4 times: Matthew,
Totally.
Mark, Luke, and John. It's a biography about the life of Jesus written by 4 eyewitnesses, 4 people who did life with him, right? And so, all of this is interesting, but I think we don't think about it. Even the Bible, like people question the validity of a Bible, saying, oh, it's just a book written by a
People
person.
picked and choose.
Well,
first
it's
books
actually
in it.
66 books.
Yeah.
Written over 1,500 years by 40 different authors on 3 continents in 3 languages with one central theme: God getting his children back, like God saving the world from sin and death. And so it's like, how do these stories written by 40 different authors over 1,500 years fit together perfectly to tell one beautiful story of God coming to the earth in this amazing rescue plan?
But why didn't he make it more obvious for us today? Like, for people who live in Jesus' time, I feel like that's way easier. Now it's like, I understand why you'd be agnostic or atheist, because it's like
way harder, I would think, then, because they're like, they're like, hey, by the way, this guy
They saw
that
at
died.
the grocery market is now saying he's Jesus.
Yeah, they're
Underdog.
like, that dude, he
Yeah.
came back to life.
Yeah.
And they're like, sure he did. No, I saw him. I
Yeah.
saw him. You're like, yeah, right. Sure he did. So I would think it would be like, now we
Man,
have all the evidence over time.
that
people,
feels ridiculous, and I'm like,
church-
that's what I believe, though.
Yeah. And like you've seen it change lives, like even our own personal testimony. Like, here's the deal. Like, how does a drug user, alcoholic, porn addict, sex addict become a pastor? Like, walk away from a job that pays, 6 figures several times over to say, hey, I want to go work at my church. And it's because Jesus changed my life.
Yeah.
It's like, I know where the best ice cream in town is. I'm going to tell everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
And even the other way, like this morning we were at a foster care house.
Yeah.
I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
And just thinking about the reason foster care exists is because of sin. And the longer you're in ministry, the
Yeah.
more you see how sin
Totally.
steals, kills, and
Totally.
destroys. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, the Bible, like God's word is trying to keep you from that. And when you don't follow that, it leads to so much brokenness.
And then anywhere there's Christianity thrives, crime is down.
Yeah.
People are well cared for, and that's
Yeah.
like the people who oppose Christians under the banner of like compassion. It's ridiculous. It's nonsensical.
Yeah.
Because anywhere like Christianity thrives, the economy thrives, the surroundings thrive, like people thrive. It's a wonderful place, you know,
Yeah.
because it's rooted in love and care and concerns for others, rather than selfishness.
What about science though? Like, what do you like? Science is so anti-design, like anti.
It's
Christian.
because of tenure and it's an echo chamber. So they like science wants to deal with what you can prove.
Yeah.
And because they cannot prove the existence of a deity, then they have to grab to the things that they can and come up with theories. And there are brilliant scientists. Like probe.org is a great site backed by science. I mean, there's brilliant science that believes in intelligent design, that believes in a creator. A great, a documentary, if you want to watch with Ben Stein, is called Expelled. It really shows the strategic approach to keep this out of schools. And it's satanic. I mean, there's an enemy, the little g god of this world, that doesn't want that narrative in the schools. But we've got to wrestle with, all right, what happens when we die?
Yeah.
In any other world religion is going to have you working really hard for a chance to win the prize with no assurance of salvation.
Yeah.
Like, you ever go to the carnival and they're like, the Midway, and they're like, I want you to throw this ball in the
Yes.
bucket, and then you get a prize, and if you do it 3 more times, you can trade in your little prize for a medium-sized prize, and if you get 2 medium-sized prizes, you can trade it for a big prize.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, all of this stuff for a chance to win the
Yes.
prize.
Yeah.
And that's like how other world religions work. It's like, hey, if you pray to Mecca, or you go there, you travel there, and you do this, and you celebrate Ramadan, there's a chance that one day you're going to get into heaven. Well, as Christians, it's the scripture says that we can literally know, 1 John 5:13, I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life, and that it's not because of what we've done. It's because of what he did for us, that Jesus Christ paid our way in. Like, if I give you tickets to the Mavs game and you go over to the American Airlines Center and they stop you and they say, why should we let you in? What are you going to say?
Got tickets.
Because I have tickets.
But yeah. And if they say, did you pay for the tickets? What would you say?
No, it was a gift.
That's exactly right. And so in the same way, if we stand before God, we can know that we're going to be with God. We can know we're going to be with him forever because of what he did for us through his son, Jesus Christ, that he paid our way in. Ephesians 2:8-9. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. It's not of yourself. It's the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. And so it's like, man, it's amazing.
You said earlier, like, it takes, like, Christians are staking their life on this whole thing being true about Jesus dying and being raised from the dead. And it's like agnostics and atheists are staking their life on the claim that he's not the way, the truth, and the life. Like, it takes just as much faith to believe in Jesus as it does to not believe. And one has, like, drastically terrible outcomes.
Everybody operates in faith.
We're
When you cross the street in front of a car, you have
Right.
faith that they're going to keep their foot on the brake and not mow you over. Like, that takes real faith. To say that there is no God takes real faith. I mean, somebody wrote a book, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. And so Blaise Pascal came up with this thing called Pascal's wager to the atheist. He says, if you're right and I'm wrong, then we both have the same ending. We both die and
Right.
we're worm food. We both go in the ground, we both rot. Like, it cost me nothing. I lived a good life, did good things. I was kind to people. I lived by Christian values, and then we both die and we both go to the ground. But if I'm right and you're wrong, it's going to be tragic for you. I get to be in paradise with God forever and ever and ever, and you go to a place where you will suffer for the rest of the rest of the rest. And it's like, wow, like, what in the world? Like, why wouldn't you then first give consideration to Christianity? And so all of these are tools to share our faith, because if we really believe it,
Right.
like, if we're not atheists and we're not agnostic and we believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one gets to the Father except through him, John 14:6, then we're going to tell people. We're going to declare, that he is good, that he is God.
But even if let's say Jesus is right, because if Jesus is right, that doesn't mean Muhammad's wrong necessarily. Like,
It does.
A lot A lot of people, though, have the thought that, like, you can believe in your God and I can believe in mine, and they're all the same
And they're all
higher
talking.
power.
It's all like different visions of the same God.
Yeah, like if you just like the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto
like,
yourself.
of course, there's a higher power.
Yeah.
I don't think that it could
So-
just happen.
So people think like,
Yeah.
God is at the top of the mountain, and Islam, will lead you up the mountain, and Hinduism will lead you up the mountain, and Buddhism will lead you up the mountain, and Judaism will lead you up the mountain. It's like, no. Like the Quran says that he is destined for hell whoever believes that the Messiah is the son of Mary.
Yeah, be
Okay.
counted among the losers.
Yeah, they will be among the losers. So that cannot be true when Jesus says, I am the Messiah, I am the way, the truth, and life. No one gets to the Father except through me, right? So every statement of religion, every world religion has a statement of exclusivity. To say that they're all right is really to say that they're all wrong, because they all contradict each other absolutely. So really only one can be right or none can be right, but they can't all be right because they all teach different things with certainty. They do not teach. People will say that your Uber driver will tell you, well, I think all religions teach relatively the same thing. No, they don't. They don't teach the same thing. I mean, Hinduism, as an example, doesn't even teach the same destination, doesn't even teach the same path to salvation. It doesn't teach the same destination. They believe in reincarnation.
Right.
So they believe that you're going to come back as a rat or a cow or a soldier, depending on how you lived, right? And so it's like that can't be true, and heaven, with God forever and ever and ever to be true. So we can't say these ignorant things under the banner of compassion. If it's not true, it's not loving, and that we have to know and understand that.
Because I think a lot of our listeners, I know something I can even struggle with is just wanting to appease people and their beliefs people hold really closely. It's personal to them. And so to tell someone that you think they're wrong feels really mean and really unloving. And in fact, it is the most loving thing that you could do for
It's
someone.
the most loving thing you can do is to tell someone how to have eternal life. Like the way that I've illustrated this is Presley and I, when we went to Zambia, we were coming back and she got really sick. And we had a layover in Qatar, depending on how you say it. And that's a small country right in the middle of Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia's over there. And you're like right in the middle of that. And there's this huge airport. It's a massive airport, one of the largest in the world. And we're there, and I'm trying to find our gate. And I'm trying to find somebody who speaks English who can help us find our gate. And if you see me in that moment of stress where I'm trying to care for my daughter who's sick and trying to get her on the plane so that we can get home, so we can get her cared for, and you're like, hey, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm trying to find which terminal, which gate's going to take us home. And you say, oh, man, I've got good news for you. Any of these gates are going to take you home. Like any of these will get you there. Like I'm going to think, man, that's so kind. Like that's great news. Thank you so much for sharing such great news with me. But when I get on one of those planes and it takes me further from home, or it takes me to a place of war, or it takes me to a place where my daughter's not welcome and they capture her and take her as prisoner, then I'm going to realize that what you told me wasn't loving because it wasn't true. And likewise, if you want to come up to me and you're like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what gate's going to take us home. And you're like, oh, it's D17. D17 goes to DFW Airport there in Texas. That's what takes you home. I'm not going to be like, man, how close-minded are you that you're trying to tell me that there's only one gate that's going to take me home? What are you thinking? What if I want to get on E16? It's like, what in the world? And you're like, no, it's D17. That's the one that's going to take you home. And the reason that's loving for me to tell you is because it's true. If it's true, it's loving. And so like, if it's not true, it's not loving. We've got to stop compromising truth under the banner of compassion. It's fake compassion. It's not real compassion. It's not loving if it's not true.
That's so good. How important, though, is it for like the average person to know all the things that you just talked about? Because you're over here talking about dinosaurs and the age of the earth and like all this, like different religions and the Korean and like being able to Quran, like quote from it. Like, do we all need to know that in defending and explaining our faith?
You need you need to have resources, like to love people enough to where if you don't have the answers to their questions, that you say, all right, hey, but here, let me go find them, And And so we need to know where those resources are. Gotquestions.org. Like I have a question. I got a question. Gotquestions.org, carm.org, CARM.org stands for Christian Apologetic and Resource Ministries.org, answersingenesis.org, probe.org. I mean, these are great resources for you.
I think like when you're having this conversation with someone who believes differently than you, honestly, curiosity is a great place to start. Like you don't have to be the expert in Islam to talk to a Muslim friend about what they believe. I think actually a better place to come from is humility and just asking, hey, why do you believe what you believe? Why are you staking your life on this? And I think when you approach the conversation with genuine curiosity and genuine like wanting to understand, seeking understanding, you're going to be able to have a conversation where you're then probably going to get the chance to share. Yeah. But not if you come at people berating them, acting like you know everything, instead just asking questions and then sharing what you do know. Because I think you mentioned it earlier, like our personal story plays into sharing our faith so much too. Like people, like I still have questions about the Bible. I still have things in life that don't make sense. I don't fully understand God. You can never fully prove him this side of eternity. And the personal relationship I have with him is like the proof that I need. So I think that can speak volumes as well.
Yeah. And I absolutely share the gospel by sharing your story and how you came to faith. But I'll wrap up with this, to go back to the atheist, the fool who says there is no God in their heart. It's like there's nothing created that we would come up against that we would assume did not have a creator. Right. Like if I'm walking through the forest and I trip over a watch and I pick it up, and it says Rolex on it, I'm not going to be like, oh man, time and chance put this watch together. And as we've said before on here, the universe is more fine-tuned than that Rolex, that the gravity is strong enough to hold us to the ground, but not so strong that it collapses us. It keeps us from floating away, and the atmosphere is so fine-tuned that, we breathe something out that the trees breathe in and turn into exactly what we need to breathe in so that we can live, and like that all of this is fine-tuned in the system, that the sun, if it was any closer, would scorch us. If it was any further, we'd freeze up, and yet it's at just the right distance, and that we spin around on this giant ball in space at 1,000 miles per hour, and yet we're held onto it by gravity as it orbits around the sun, so that we experience the 4 seasons and don't burn up or freeze. I mean, it's like unbelievable. Yeah, it's so much more fine-tuned than something that tells time, which is really just a man-made construct around the natural seasons and that particular watch. I'm saying in air quotes, if you will. And the same way, if you like come up on a wall in the forest, of bricks stacked together with mortar, you're going to assume that there was a bricklayer. You're not going to be like, oh man, time and chance, over time, those bricks stacked together somehow. And it's just like, so how much more with our creation should we assume that there's a creator, like a designer, that somebody thought all of this into existence? So happy National Atheist Day.
Should we do our goodbye song?
Yeah.
We have come to the end of the road. What's next?
That's a little pitchy.
What's next?
Although we go to the end of the road, still I can't let go. It's unnatural. You belong to me. I belong to...
I really gotta go.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. To find out more, visit becomingsomething.com.